on the basics. If you remember from last week, right, I said dynamic data masking has 4 functions, right? We call them the masking functions, which is the default, which is the email, which is the partial, and which is random. So those are the 4 default, and those are the 4 functions that you can use for dynamic data masking, and that's what we are going to tackle. All right. So I heard Chizoba mentioned interview question on relating to dynamic data masking. So things like that, if they ask you anything on dynamic data masking, what you can say is that dynamic data masking is a security measure, though not an encryption. All right, because it doesn't affect the underlying data. What it just does is that it marks the data in front. So when you apply dynamic data masking, it doesn't affect the underlying data. It doesn't affect the data at rest. All right, and anybody with elevated permission, for example, like a sysadmin, will be still able to see the masking. They'll be able to see the data behind the mask. Okay, so, and most times when you configure dynamic data masking, and for example, companies, like you want to mark sensitive data like your social security, right? You want to mark social security number column, a column that has social security number. You use dynamic data masking, but underlying data at rest, you can use something like transparent data encryption to encrypt the data at rest, so you can protect your MDF and NDF, LDF files. Then dynamic data masking, they asked me a question, okay, so within your environment, give us a scenario that you used it. I'll say, oh, okay, for example, sometimes developer will request access to a particular table. And I know they're going to run a select statement on that table because the access they're looking for is data reader. And on that table, right, we have sensitive columns. It could be email, it could be maybe, like, for example, it's a hospital, patient information, and so on and so forth. So for me to be able to ensure that they don't see those sensitive columns when they run their select statement, maybe whatever they are doing, to be able to see how many rows we return, or, you know, whatever they're doing. But I just don't want them to see that sensitive column. Then I'll go ahead and configure dynamic data masking on that column, because it's also one thing about it is that it's very easy to configure. So I go ahead and mask that particular column for them, and then they will not be able to have access to that particular column. They will see, the column will actually come out, but they will not see what is written there because of the masking. When we do the demo, you will have an idea, right, of what I'm talking about, because we're going to now use the different types of masking function and see how they work. Then if they still want me to go more detailed, dynamic data masking has its own limitations. For example, a column, right, that has a clustered index, or has, bottom line, just use the word dependency. A column that has dependency, dynamic data masking will not work on it. So if a column has a clustered index, or a primary key, or a foreign key, dynamic data masking would not work on that column. All right, I'm going to try it also on a particular column that has a clustered index, so we can all see the kind of error message we're going to have. So those are the kind of things you will say about dynamic data masking that will let them understand that you have a good experience handling dynamic data masking. Let's jump into demo. Like I said, today is not going to be too much of theory, but demo, and then we can now be explaining alongside the demo. Okay, so we're going to be using this table.
Michael, you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not?
No, you're
Whoa, okay.
all this while.
I'm so sorry. Really? I'm sorry. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to be using this table. Okay, now, oh, please don't mess me up today. Okay, so we're going to be using this table, right? This is MPIT Tech, right? That's the table we're using. And we're going to be, we're going to be using this database. And the table we're going to be using is dbo.customer. Now, this table is part of availability group. I purposely did that also so that we can see how it works, right? You can have a question. If I run a max on the table that is on a database, right? A table that is in the database that is part of availability group, will it affect the secondary if I route users to the secondary? Will users also be able to see that particular table if it's maxed on the primary? If you don't understand that, it can throw you off guard if you've not done it before. And then you begin to do guesswork. I'm not sure. What we do the demo, we'll do the masking, we'll go to the secondary and see if the secondary also is going to be maxed. I'm going to mask it from the primary and go to the secondary and then check it out. Then also we're going to use, like I said, we're going to use a SQL account, right, to also check the masking, because this particular account here is an administrative account. It has sysadmin permission. So if I do any masking, we'll still see the mask. We'll still see the data behind the mask. So we'll open a SQL account that has been created. We're going to use the SQL account called vendor. This is a SQL account. We'll use this vendor account, log into the server, and check the result of that. So let me just quickly log in to the SQL account. Okay, let's do this quickly. Okay. One password, guys. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this is the SQL account for vendor. I'll leave this here first and start with the administrative account and then do the masking. They will come to the vendor account, open it, like let's assume this is a third-party vendor or a developer who has least privilege. We'll use that developer's account and open it to see how they will see the result on the underlying table. Okay, so let's start with this. We're going to start with the default. Remember, come here, put it to the table you want. We're using MPIT Tech. So now, what do we want to do now? Okay, the database, like I said, is MPIT Tech. Table is dbo.customer. So we want to alter this table. Okay, and sorry, before I do this, let me just quickly run this table. Select statement. So we see the result. So these are the results that we have on this table. We have a customer, first name, last name, date of birth, monthly bill, email, and credit card. And all of the, they have different column data types, all right? Some have the NVARCHAR and some have hint. Some of the masking don't work on hint. Some don't work on NVARCHAR data type. We're going to see that. I'm going to do that also so we can see the error that will come out. All right, so I'm going to leave this open. Come here, we're starting with the default. So this default now, we want to mark this table. I'm sorry, we want to mark this column, first name and NVARCHAR. So this is the syntax. It's a generic syntax. You can get this syntax on even Microsoft site that, you know, or any, I mean, just type syntax for default and default masking, it will give you, okay? So what you need to do is put your table name, the name of the column, you put the data type, all right? Then maxed with function equals default. So you have to write it properly for it to not to give you error. Okay, so now, like I said, let's look at the first name here. Look at the first name. Now, when you do the default means when you're maxing for using default means it's going to give you XXXX for like NVARCHAR data type. All right, it's not going to give, it doesn't give you that flexibility like a partial, what do you call it, partial max function. It's just the XXX if you're using a string data type. But if you're using numerical data type, for example, like int or small int, it just gives you one number, which is 0. And we're going to try that. Remember what I just said. For the string data type, it's going to give you just XXXX. That's the default. No, nothing changes. For numerical data type like int, small int, and so on and so forth, it just gives you one numerical number, which is 0. So let's run this first so you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so we're doing for the first name column with the default and execute this, complete. Remember what I said. If we come back, we're going to run this again. Select. You can see it's still showing. That is to let you know anybody that has sysadmin permission will still see it. That's why we are always very cautious with people having sysadmin permission, because there are so many things you do. Once you have sysadmin, you can still see it. All right, so within an organization, it's not always many people that have sysadmin. Okay, so this is a sysadmin account. I'm still seeing it. Now I've done this. The vendor from the vendor's own side now decides, okay, it wants to open it. So the vendor, I've given him permission to the MPIT Tech database. So this is now from the vendor perspective, okay? Please don't confuse it. I'm opening this from the vendor perspective. Now I'm going to open, select, let's just run select 1000. I mean, I don't have a lot of rows here, so I can run this. So just give me all what I have, which is 10 rows. So it's not expensive for me. Okay, I run this, and as you can see, gives X, 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 X. This is how the default will show. Nothing changes, just one line of X. All right, now let's quickly run it on, let's run this, right, on a column that has int. Okay, so which of my column has int? From here already, I can see what has int. But if you want to check your environment and you want to quickly check what column is what, for those that don't have an idea, you can come here, go to the table, and come here. You can see here, right? So look at it here. The first one I did, remember, was nvarchar for the first name with 10. All right. So for this one now, I want to do the monthly bill, which is int. So I'm just going to now change that nvarchar to monthly bill int. Come back to where my query is. Yeah. So I'm going to change this, right? Yep. To monthly bill. You have to write it correctly. Int. Okay. Now, remember, I just did it here. The first name, because it was string data type, right? I'm still using the default. Because it was string data type, it gives me XXXX. Now I want to write to do this. It will still give me a default of one single number, which is 0, or one numerical digit, which is 0. Now you can see I have 90,000 plus 90,000, 89,000, some 5-figure, right? So let's come here and see what will happen to that monthly bill table and column, sorry. Okay, I do that, complete. Now let's go back to our vendor and run the table again. So you look at it, monthly bill is now 0. The same function, default function. This is a string data type. This is numerical data type. You can see what it gives you for string data type. You can see what it gives you for numerical data type, right? So that's what the default function will do. Okay, so that's that for what do you call it, for default. Now I'm going to still need those columns back because I might still use it. So I'll jump the gun to use the alter table. Now, for me to remove a mask from a table, this is just the simple syntax for that, right? You alter the table, alter the column, and drop marks, and that's it. All right. So let's drop the marks for monthly bill. Alter table, alter column, and drop marks. I'm just going to run this to drop the mask on that table. And once I do this, that mask is dropped. Okay. Let's come back to, this is still the vendor. Okay. So if I run this select here, look at the masking here, it's 0. I'm still going to execute it again on the vendor's own open session. And it comes back to the 5 figures that it was, as you can see. Okay, so let's say I also want to drop it also for the first name. Where's that my syntax? Okay, I have it here. I don't want this one, sorry. Okay, so yeah. So yeah, for this, I'll just come now, put it to that first name column, first underscore name. Okay, do this. I've dropped the marks on the first name column. Let's go back to the vendor session. This is the vendor session. Look at the first name. It's all on X. I have dropped it from the administrator, which is the sysadmin DBA. I've dropped it. So let's run this again from the vendor perspective. It's back. All right. So I've dropped those 2 columns, the masking on those 2 columns, and everything comes back. So you can see there's no difficulty. I mean, there's no elaborate process like what you have in TDE or always encrypted where you have to do with the keys and the certificate. No, you just go straight up, drop marks. I can even give you as a vendor a permission, grant you as a user a permission for you to be able to drop marks, for you to be able to also, create marks. So you can check that out, how to grant permission for grant to a user, for user to be able to marks and unmarks a table. Okay, all right. So that is for default function. So let's go to the next one. The next one we're going to do now is random. So let me copy this and go to our open session. Copy this. I want to put it in the clearer session so it will be clear. Okay. So we're done with these ones. I can delete these ones. Done with the default. Okay, now we're working with random, right? Now random simply means that I want it to be random. Okay, but I can specify what digit I want it to be, right? As you can see this one now, what it means is that if I put it this way, I want it to be that particular column. I want you to just give me random numbers between 3 and 9. That's it. If I change 3 and 9 here, say, okay, I want the numbers there to be between 10 and 90. It will give me digits on that column, right? Between 10 and 90. Now, the random works only with numerical data types, all right? So it works only with numerical data types. Let's run this on monthly bill because that's where we have our numerical data type, which is the int, okay? So I'm going to alter this table, alter column, monthly bill. I mean, it's basically the same thing too. All you just need to do is change this default that was here to random. And then the default, remember I had no open column. It was just open and close bracket. But this one has things inside the bracket for you. These are parameters for you to decide how you want those digits to look like. So instead of default, that will give you 0, 0, 0. I just want it, just give me random numbers depending on your decision or whatever it is that you're doing. So let's run this and see how it will work. Now remember the monthly bill has 90,000, 85,000, 5-figure numbers and so on. So I'm going to run this, execute. So let's go back to our vendor account and see, look at it, it's still showing. But if I run the select statement, I put it between 10 and 90, right? Now, look at it. 35, 81, you will see none of them is going to be below 10 and none of them is going to be above 90. So you see 35, 81, 83, it just gives you a random figure between 10 and 90. So the highest here that it even gave is 83. It cannot give you beyond 90 because that's what I told it to do. Okay, let me change it now to between 2, okay, no, even between 2 and 9. I don't want it to be between 2 and 9. Just give me random numbers between 2 and 9. I'm going to run this. Execute. Let's come back to our vendor session to check it out. Run the script. Look at it. Between 2 and 9. None is less than 2. None is above 9. So that's what the random function will do. You have to specify what you want. Everything depends on your company needs, or sometimes you just want to play around with it. All right. So you are the one that will decide what parameters you want to make it random.
Question.
Okay. Oh, please, yeah.
So can you go back to the other screen?
To the other screen or session.
Yeah, sorry, session.
This one, the run.
The random number that you're specifying is
Yes,
basically to determine not range of numbers. It's just you're saying that on that column, don't provide any number that is not two, that is not less than 2, and that is not more than 9. So, but they have to be single digit. Must they be?
that's correct.
Okay.
It will be single digit because anything above 9 is now double digit.
Correct.
So the bottom line is don't make any number less than 2. Don't make any number more than 9. Let it be between 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I can decide to change it and say, you know what? I want to make it 1,000, between 1,000 and 5,000. Let's run this. Okay, so you executed. Let's come back here. Now it will between 1,000 and 5,000. Remember, that's what I wrote. So let's execute this and see. So you can see it has changed. None is going to be less than 1,000. If you look at it, none is going to be more than 5,000. All these are security parameters. So now if I'm doing something like this and I have a bill, a monthly bill or something, some figure, salary or something that I need to hide, I can be changing it randomly if I put it this way. And maybe I'm changing it for developers or people. I'll just be changing it randomly. You will never guess what it is. So every day I can just decide, okay, let's change it. I mean, depending on, I'm not just saying I'm going to be changing it like I'm playing with it, all right? But I mean, depending on your business need. And if your manager say, okay, let's go ahead and let's do the security, just like the way you have password and they say every quarter we change our password. So you could say, okay, you know what, every month change that particular column, change the range. All right, so people don't go and start trying to brute force or do anything to guess, whatever software they have to be able to try and get the underlying data. So you'll be changing it and playing around with it based on, it's like changing the password, more or less. So this range is what you specify here that it will give you for random, okay? Now let's try on a string data type, okay? I mean, you can already see with the numbers, it won't work for string data type. So let's not just go there. If I want to try for, what do you call it, for this column, let's say first name, it won't work because it has to specify with number. It will give us an error. All right. So let me not waste time with that. So if they ask you something like that and say, oh, you have proficiency in dynamic data masking. What if I want to use a random function? All right, on like first name or address. Once they talk like that, you know that is a string data type. It's not numerical. So you say, oh, if that is a string data type, then it won't work because random just works for already numerical. Okay, so that's for random. Let's go to the next one, email. Let me copy the email. Come to here. So we're done with random. Okay, now for email. So email, what the email will do, right? Let's go back to vendor session. Look at the emails we have. So you can see now we have fredcollins@gmail.com. We have Jack Peters at gmail. We also have at yahoo.com. We also have at outlook.com. This one, I purposely did it like that, .com. When I saw it, I said, okay, let me leave that one like that. So when I do it, you will see how it also comes, all right? This also has .com. It could be .co.uk, I mean, .ng. Now, the bottom line is that whatever it is, what the email does is that it just marks the first, it opens the first letter, right? The first figure, it leaves it open. Then everything after the first figure till the @ symbol is masked. After the @ everything after the @ is masked until the .com. So whatever you have again after your @ it just becomes maxxx.com. So even if you have .ng, it's going to change it to .com. Even if you have .com, it's going to change it to xxx.com. Even if you have if you Yahoo, whatever it is, bottom line, after the @ symbol becomes xxx.com, no matter what it is, ng.co, and so on and so forth. So let's try it now and let's see. So this is for the email column. All right. This is how the syntax is. You can see the open and close bracket, which means you cannot pass in parameters. This is also like the default. It's like a default in short, because you can't pass in parameters like the way you pass in parameter in default and in random and partial. Okay, random and partial are the only ones you can pass parameters. Email, you cannot pass parameter. Default, you cannot pass parameter. Email is like just a default as well. Let's put it like that. Okay, so let's run this. Completed. Come to the vendor now. Look at the email it's showing. I'm going to run this again now for the vendor. Bam, that's what it is. So you can see only the first letter is open. Everything after the first letter is X, then @ everything after the @ now just becomes xxx.com. No matter what was after that @ it becomes xxx.com, xxx.com. Now, you can also see that this was Fred Collins, right? So everything becomes 3x at 4x.com, everything. All right, Fred Collins is not 3 letters. This one that was here, Jack Peters I wrote it full, Jack Peters dot, at whatever it is I put there. But bottom line is that it now becomes 123x at 1234x.com. No matter what you saw, just take it that after that first letter, everything becomes everything becomes default. Everything is a default usage after the first letter. The first letter remains what it is. Everything now becomes 3x at 4x.com, no matter what you have after that first letter. So it's a default kind of way that retains only the first letter for email. So yeah, so email. Now with email, the funny thing is that you can have found ways that you can still do other things like, for example, let's say this this first name, I can actually use the email masking for this first name. It will give me F and then give every other thing xxx at xxx.com. So that's the way it is, and let's just try it out. You guys will see. So that first name was first name, underscore name, then nVAC was 10, max with function. Yeah, so yeah, let's do this. Execute. Yeah, so it worked for the first name as well. So the first name is going to look as if it was an email. This is still the vendor. You can see. So one day I saw this and I was laughing. I'm like, okay, so I can actually still use email for a column that is not email. So bottom line, companies just use it just to let it signify that is an email account. Let's use the email for that email to remain that standard. But you can actually use it for another column and it will work. I'm not sure it can work for int. I've not tried it with int. All right. But for string type, as you can see from the screen, it will still make it look as if it's an email. So I can do this sometimes by, first name. Anybody that sees it, why is it looking like this? It's all in all, it's still a security measure to mask what is there if that's what I want. But just to have an understanding, email, just use it for your email column. Then somebody will know, okay, this is an email column that is marked. Depends on how your company works. Your manager might decide to tell you, play around with it. I want people to think that's an email column, but that's not an email. It's actually more sensitive, so they might not go there. It depends. Okay, so that is that for email. Let's now go to the fourth one, which is partial. So partial is the one of, I think I would say, one of the most flexible. All right. Partial is one of the most flexible. You can play around with partial and construct it the way you want. We're going to be working with the credit card here. credit card column. This is a credit card column. The credit card column, I know you can see a lot of numerical, but it is actually an NVARCHAR column. Partial also does not work with int data, numerical data type. Any numerical data type, it doesn't. Why you see a lot of numbers here is because I use a string data type. Numerical data type, you will not have this dash, right? You won't have the dash. So NVARCHAR can take numbers, it can take dash, it can take figures and stuff like that. Like when you're writing an address and so on. So you use NVARCHAR to create this column. So now, where's that again? Okay, yeah. So this is what we want to do now. What are we doing in partial? Now, partial, as you can see, the open bracket, and these parameters means you can actually alter what you want. So this one now means 2, double quote, XX-X, double quote, then 2 again. What is it saying? It means I want the first two letters or numbers, whatever it is, the first 2 figures or letters, numbers to show. I want the first 2 to show. Then everything in the middle should be XX minus X, no matter what it is. Then the last 2, I want it to show. Let's run this and you will see what I'm saying. We've run this. Let's come back to vendor session. This is what we're doing. You can see this is the first 2. This is the last 2. Everything in between, no matter how long it is, I want it to be XX minus XX. So let me now execute. Remember, I've run this, so I can just execute. And this is it. The first 2 shows, middle XX minus XX, last 2 shows. First 2 shows, middle XX minus XX, last 2 shows. That is what the parameter that I put in to do. You can play around with this parameter. Let me remove the max. I will play around with it. I'll try and do it the way normal social security number, how you see it. So let me drop the max for credit card number. Let's copy it from here. You see from here, Control P. All right. So I'm dropping the max. Okay, I've dropped the max. Let's come back to be sure. Execute this. Okay, it's open again. So now let's pass in another parameter on the credit card number column. So now I don't want anything to show. I want it to be like the way normal credit card is. You just see your XXX dash XXXX. Okay, we'll show the last 4 numbers. Then the first 6 numbers are out. So what I will do, don't show anything in the beginning. That's 0. You put 0 there. I don't want anything to show in the beginning. Put 0. Now, what do I want in the middle? I want it to be XXX dash XXX. Then I want the last 4 numbers to show. Okay, wait, this one also will be a dash so that they can blend with the last 4. So I'm doing XXX dash XXX dash. Then I come here. I want the last 4 numbers or last 4 digits. Let me put it that way. Okay, so the 0, nothing should show at first. What should show in the middle, XXX dash XXX dash again, then the last 4 numbers can show. Let's run this. Okay, why is it giving me invalid argument for data masking function partial for column credit card? Hold on, I think something. Let me remove that last dash at the back. Run it again. Okay, hold on. Is it that this 0 in front? Sorry guys, troubleshooting. Incorrect number of parameters for data masking function partial. Why? Sorry, just give me a second. Let's quickly troubleshoot this. Okay, I want it to be 0. 0. Okay. XXX dash XXX. Okay. Then the last 4 numbers. column. Okay, let me remove all of the X. I'm trying to figure out why. Invalid argument for data masking. Okay, this is funny. Sorry. Let me see. Sorry, guys. This is something that sometimes can happen. Okay, so there's no masking there. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, no, this is administrator account, so it should work. Let me try what I used before. XX minus XX minus 2. So why is this going to work? This is
Michael,
what I just.
under which account context are you on?
I'm under the administrator, yeah. I just ran this now. For some reason, even when I ran earlier that worked now, it's not working
Can you
again.
open a new query window?
I think that's what I will do. Let me close this one. Okay, this is on vendor. Come to here, open this new query window. Okay. So where did I get my syntax from? Okay, did I put double quote on those things? That will be on it. Okay, so I have done that. This is not exactly what I want. I'm going to now come back to vendor, run it. Okay, it's maxed. Let me drop it and then run it the way I want that parameter to be. Drop the max, dropped it, come back to vendor, let's test it. Execute, it's back open. Okay, so now let me run it just from here. I don't want anything to show in the front, and I want the last 4 numbers to show. Then this one, I want X here. I want X here. Let's run this. That's it. Maybe did I put double quote when I was doing it that time?
No, that was what is costing.
Yeah, because sometimes that's you queries like this. You have one just small thing like double quotes will just mess you up. Okay, so let's go back to the vendor now and check it. Execute this. So this is what I wanted. Okay, let me go back. I wanted it to have that extra dash on the back, the way you will see. Where is it again? Let me drop the max first. Okay, let me drop the max. Okay, come back here. Okay, so it's open now. So come back here, put one more dash. All right, let's run this. So this is what I wanted, right? Nothing to show in front, 0, XXX dash XXX dash. Then let the last 4 numbers show. So look at it, it's open. If I execute this now, XXX dash XXX dash. This is how your social security number normally show. You just see XXX dash XXX dash 900. Just the last 4 will show. Sometimes they might not put dash. Let's remove those dash. Sometimes you might decide that, okay, you know what? I don't want, I mean, you guys get the picture more or less. You know, so this is what it is, right? You will specify the parameters that you want in partial, which is what was done here, right? We specify these parameters XXX dash. So here you can play around with how you want your dash and so on and so forth. I don't even know whether, let me even try. I've never tried this. If I use some other number, let me just try. If I use AAA, let's just try it, because things like this in our lab environment, you know, just to show you how flexible it is. So let me drop the marks on that credit card column. Done that. Come back here and run this. It actually went. First time I'm doing with another letter. So let's come to the vendor, right, and execute it. So you can see A all the way. So more or less, you can actually play with it. You can be flexible with what you want it to be. That's why I said the partial is the most flexible. But the only thing about partial, if I want to use it now on like this monthly bill, it would not work. It would tell me that let's try it. Let's say they say, okay, go to a numerical data type. Let me put this monthly bill. So I'm going to use the monthly bill. So I'm dropping the max that is there. Done that. So let's go back here. So now for credit card now, we're going to change it to monthly bill. Yep, it's signify int. Okay, so I want to max this with this. But let's first check whether the monthly bill is okay. Execute. Okay, it's back to what it was, 5 figures. So let's come here and let's try with this one, right? Now this is the error you would see. The data type of column monthly bill does not support the maxing function partial. All right. So in case you come up with something like that, if you're doing an interview and somebody wants to be, a little bit pushy or deep, I say, okay, fine. You've told us about the 4 function maxing function. So if I want to do a maxing function of partial on a numerical column, will it work or will it not work? What will happen? So it won't work. Partial works for only like string data type, right? Where nvarchar, char, varchar, and so on and so forth. But when it comes to numerical, int, small int, and so on and so forth, it will not work. So you can see the error from here, it did not work, okay? So yeah, so that's what it is. We're done with the 4 functions. Remember, we have the default, we have the random, we have the email, we have the partial. With default, you cannot, it's as it is, default, you cannot pass parameter. When you run default on string data type, it will give you XXSX. When you run default on numerical data types, it just gives you 0. That's the default. It doesn't change. You can't pass parameters. For random works only with numerical, right? And you can pass what are the random numbers you want. So if you want it to be between 1 and 10, you want it to be between 1,000 and 5,000 or 10,000, anything you decide what random numbers you want that particular column to be replaced with. So if you have it in salary, I can say, okay, you know what? I don't even want people to know how long the salary is. Just pass between 1 and 10. So in salary column, you just see 3, 4, 5. So you can't even guess. You can't even think of what it is to be there. So I'm not even going to do any random number close to the normal figure of what that salary is. I'll just put it to one number between 1 and 9, pass random numbers between 1 and 9 on salary column that probably has 6 figures. Okay. Email, like you can see, email, you just replace the first letter, right? Every other thing after the first letter becomes xxx at xxx.com, 3x at 4x.com. Partial is flexible, but the only thing is that it doesn't work with numerical. Okay, so I can pass partial. How many do I want in the front? How many do I want? What do I want in the middle? What do I want at the back? Or I can decide that, okay, you know what? I want only in the front. Nothing should be, let X be all through, or A, or you can see we tried another letter and it worked, but most preferably companies like using X. So we'll put X in between and then 0 at the back. So just show me only 2 letters in front, or 1 letter in front, 1 letter in back, whatever it is. You'll be the one to specify how you want this arrangement to be. All right, it's very flexible for you to design how that column will look like. Okay, now the last one that I want to show you is dependency. Okay, for dependency, I'm going to use, what did I use? Okay, I'm going to use, okay, sorry, I said I was going to show you quickly on the secondary. So let me open my secondary. I'm still going to use the vendor to log into the secondary, because if I use administrative account, I'll still see what is there. Wrong password again. Okay, so now I'm connected to the secondary node. This is the secondary node. If you come here, You can see it's secondary. Let's come to the availability group. Okay, I need to give it permission. I'm not giving permission to that account. Only my administrative accounts will be able to see that. Okay, I don't want to take too much time. But bottom line is that the vendor account will still see only, okay, I mean, I don't need to go there, sorry. From here, I can just come to the database. I just wanted to show you guys. So this is the database, why it showed me there, why it showed me like that, this vendor doesn't have the right permission to go and start seeing what I have on availability group. So that's right, I gave it the least permission, but you can see just what I wanted to see on that database. And you can see I gave it only 2 permissions on this database. How many database do I have on this server? I have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 databases. I gave it permission to the 2 databases that are part of availability group, 1, 2, AdventureWorks and MPIT Tech, because that's the database I want it to work. So that vendor now connects to the secondary server. Once it connects to the secondary server, you can only see these 2 databases, as you can see now. The vendor has connected to the secondary server, right? And can only see these 2 databases. Okay. Quickly, let's go into the MPIT Tech. I gave it just data reader. So from the data reader now, it comes here and run a select statement. Remember, what we want to check is what you mask in your primary node. Will it still show as mask in your secondary node? So let's see it demo. So you can see it's still showing marks. This is the secondary node. Look at it here, SQL Pro 2. Okay, this is the database. It has only read access. All right, and you can see what was marked in prod synchronizes to what you have in the secondary. So that's a question. If they ask you if you marks a database on primary, will it be marked in secondary if users are connecting to secondary? All right, so you can see that it will still be marked on an availability group database. Okay, so I wanted to show you that one. So let's go back to SQL Prod 1 so I can quickly show you on column that is having a dependency of what do you call it? A primary key or clustered index. Clustered index. So I should have that somewhere. I don't need this right now. Okay, so this is it. Okay, so we're going to use AdventureWorks for this one. Okay, let's go to AdventureWorks. What table is this? Production.location. So come here, let's come to, this is it, production.location. If I check on the column, this location is a primary key. Okay, it's a primary key. Now, yes, it's an identity key, an identity column, okay? But there are sometimes there might be some columns, right? That might not be identity column, but they're a primary column, or it has what do you call it, dependency as foreign keys and so on and so forth. I just want to use this one to show you that if you run it on that column, right, that has a primary key, what is going to show us, right? So I want to run random on it because that location is it's a hint numerical, okay? So random works with hints. Let's go ahead and run this. What does it say? As you can see, what it says is that the object PK primary key location, which is the name of the index, right? And the name of the name of the primary key is dependent on column this. There's also F key, which is a foreign key. This is the name of that foreign key. It's also dependent on that column. So there's a foreign key also that's dependent on this. There's another foreign key, right? As you can see, is dependent on that location ID. All right. Alter table, alter column, location field, because one or more objects are accessing this column. So in that situation, you have more than 2 columns, right, that are accessing that particular column. They are called dependencies. So it cannot work. So if it's so important that you must mark that column, what Microsoft says that you should do, right, on how it's applicable normally is that you have to drop those dependencies. So you drop those foreign keys, you drop the primary key on that table, you max it. Then when you do that, you will now begin to re-add those dependencies. It's a long process. That syntax, you can go do research on that one. Let that be your own homework or further research, all right, to see how you can max a column that has dependencies. You drop it, and then you have to max that column, then now begin to add those dependencies again. I mean, it has a way, a documentation for that. That one, I can't cram that one. There's a documentation that you follow it. But the bottom line is that you have to first understand the process. All right. What are the maxing functions? What are the different kind of maxing? Once you understand those processes, how the function and technology works, every other documentation, you can follow it up. All right. Most of the things we do in IT is to understand the basic technology that are complicated. Nobody most times will tell you, or no manager will tell you, crack your head on the spot. There are research and there are documents for you to do. But because you understand it, you will now understand what the steps and documentation is telling you to do. So this one has a process for you to be able to do that for columns that have dependencies. How do you max them? So the process that will show you how to drop those dependencies first, then go ahead, max the column, and then I think I myself have to refresh my mind again and check those documentation to see how to do that has dependencies. But what I'm showing you here is that in case you jump a situation like that and you think, oh, maxing is easy, let me just max this column, and that column shows you this kind of error, don't panic. Go and do your research online. It's there. You will see how to be able to drop those dependencies and go ahead and do that masking. Okay. So at this point, I think I've given, coupled with last week, I've given a good insight on what dynamic data masking is all about, how simple it is, all right, and how it doesn't affect your underlying data and so on and so forth. So with this, you should be able to have a good takeaway and know at least the fundamentals of how to work on dynamic data masking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. Any questions?
Any questions?
Any questions? Any questions? Okay, all right. So apparently we're out of time. We have just 5 minutes. It's not possible for us to start a new topic. So next week we're going to start a new series on Power BI. It's not possible for us to learn everything about Power BI in one session. So we'll learn it, gradually. We'll probably have like maybe 2 weeks, two webinars, or 3 at most. We should be able to finish it. All right. We don't have any questions. I think we should call it a day. Michael, I want to thank you very much. That was brilliant presentation right there.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to always do that.
Okay, guys. So apparently we don't have any question. So see you guys next week, Thursday. And please, let's try to join on time so we can achieve a lot more. Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Have a good night.